and welcome to DriveHUD 2. This video is going to focus on the main highlights of how to get the most out of DriveHUD 2 and understand the general layout and most important features. If you watch this video to its entirety, it'll save you a ton of time in the long run, so I highly recommend it. This video is going to be broken down into segments so you can go back and watch any specific areas that you need to revisit. And then there's more in-depth videos that we have separately outside of this video that will go and break down the functions and features in a lot more detail than we're going to do. But this video is going to give you pretty much everything you're going to need to know on a general basis. So let's dive right in. So when you load up DriveHUD 2, you'll be in your main dashboard. This is where your cash game data is stored. If you play tournaments, your tournament data will be stored here. And across all of the tabs that you're in DriveHUD 2, you'll have this main ribbon menu here. So I'm going to start at the top and work my way down and go over each of these tabs, and then we'll go into each of them and break them down a little further. So as I said, the dashboard is where your cash game data is. Tournament tab is all your tournament data. R&D is your research and development, where you can deep dive into aspects of your game with custom graphing and analysis options. The HUD tab is where you can edit your HUD and create new custom HUDs. The Apps tab contains several sub-tabs. The first one that loads is the HUD Store. This is where you can browse new free and commercial HUDs, run integrated apps that run with DriveHUD 2, check out our latest rakeback offers, and view recommended poker Twitch streamers. Working our way over to the right here is the filters pull-down menu. This is where you can create new filters, load previous ones you've loaded. Anything that you load, the last 5 that you've loaded will be saved here for a quick reference. You can just click on them, but you can add date filters or go into load and create custom filters. And then this will break down this. There's another video that goes into this in much more detail, but just know this is where most of the filters are, and you can go through the filter list. If you click on any of these, like let's say you want to know all your 3-bet pots, click on it once, it'll load a filter. 3-bet equals yes, you'll see green. Click on it again, it'll turn red. 3-bet equals no, so this will show all the hands where you didn't 3-bet, or just click again and it'll turn it off. There's a whole bunch of quick filters here that you can apply if you just want to run and take a look at a couple of simple things. Triple barrel with less than mid pair, boom, and then you can just click apply. Here to the right is your current player ID. This is where you want to set whatever your username is at the poker site that you're playing at. If you are playing multiple sites and you want to load all that data and show it all at once, then you need to create an alias. So you just go here, click create alias, and then you'll be able to load up and load an interface that will allow you to combine different players across sites, and then you give that a name, and then that will be the ID that you use to load here to show all of your poker sites combined. So either do that or you just show them individually. To the right here is your import pull down. So if you want to import some hand histories from a file or from a directory, you click there. This is your main settings button here. If you load this up, it'll allow you to change several default settings. Again, this is covered in other areas in much more detail, but you can change like the theme if you don't like the dark, you can go to like a light, display relevant data in big blinds or dollars, run a database backup, check out what the current version of DriveHUD 2 is. So this is always handy to check if maybe you haven't updated for a while, you haven't seen an auto update. You can always go here to let you know when the newest one is, and if there's something newer than what you have a button to update. And the last button here is the handy support icon. If you click on this, if you have a question about something in DriveHUD 2 or you're having an issue or something, just fill out this form. You can keep your attached log checked, send a message, and support will answer your question. The send advanced log, if someone in support asks for an advanced log, like development needs one, then you check this, but don't check this otherwise unless you're asked. And here you find some links to online manual, our support forums, and knowledge base. The knowledge base is super helpful if there's something you're stuck on or you want to know a little bit more detail about a specific area. You can just click on knowledge base, type in a couple keywords or one keyword, and you'll get several article suggestions and videos. It's a great quick reference to find out most of the information you're going to need, so highly recommend that. So the left here you have your gauges. This is kind of showing an overview of your main stats that most people like to reference. So this kind of just gives you a visual, let you know your total hands, money won. That's all pretty straightforward. To the right here is one of your main graphs. You can graph this by your hands, year, month, week, big blind, so on. So your showdown, non-showdown, and expected values, so you can turn those on or off with just a click. Also, if you right click here in the graph, you can export this to an image if you wanted to post or share somewhere, and you can change the chart type if you wanted to go to a more pixelated, or you want to expand that. Also, here is a pop-out feature with a few different extra graphing options. So as you'll see, you just kind of get a bigger version of this, which you can expand and explore more. You have the same options here. You can change your graph type, and then you have a few different showdown, non-showdown, EV difference graphs, and along with a few different options and a pie chart graph here, so you can take a look at these. If you didn't want to see your gauges or graphs, you can just click on this area right here, hide gauges and graphs. So if you're doing more of database analysis and you just want to really deep dive into more data, you can consolidate that. You can also adjust your columns by just dragging and dropping and expanding or contracting your reports and hand grid area here. So underneath this top section in this middle area here, you have several icons. The first one here is your equity calculator. You can just click on that to load that up if you want to run an equity calculation for Hold'em, Omaha. There's 6+, and I'm sure there's more that will be added here soon. Hand chart editor. So this allows you to create a custom hand chart. You can save these for reference. You can, once you create a hand chart, you can use those to do a report feature, which will analyze the sessions you played and let you know when you played incorrect hands and positions you ideally wouldn't like to, and also create a quiz from it once you create a hand chart. So this next section is ICM calculator, mainly used for tournaments here. If you wanted to take a look and see whether a shove or call or something was plus EV, you can do that by entering the data. This next one is quiz, which I was referencing. Once you make a hand chart, you'll see here select hand chart, and then you can go through and click on one of these and it'll create a custom quiz. So if you want to try, looking at how you're playing in 3 or 4 bet pots or things like that, you can make a whole bunch of different types of quizzes and kind of drill in those for yourself. This next section here lets you know what currently active filters are. So right now there's no filters. If I had a filter loaded, it would show here and I could exit out if I wanted to remove it, but it'll list it there. This next section allows me to select how many hands I want to show in this hand history grid section. Here we have show whole cards. If this is checked, when I load up a hand in the hand replayer, it'll automatically show the currently set hero whole cards. If you uncheck this, then it'll hide them. So this is just helpful if you don't want to know the hands that are being played at all. You just want to go through and review and kind of see the situation from a range perspective without knowing hand specifics. Next section here, if you click here, it'll only show any hands that you've tagged. So real quick, to tag a hand, you just right click, select tag hand, and you can select what kind of tag. You can create new tags. So if you click edit tag, I can create new and have those. So these are handy. You can do when you're reviewing your sessions. If you maybe there's a marginal spot you want to tag, you can also do this while you're playing. You can tag it on the table. You can tag 3 hands at a time, a single hand. There's also hotkeys that you can create for this as well. So if you click for review, you can set a hotkey. So if I'm playing, I can just hit Control T after that hand happens, and boom, that'll be tagged for review. And then I can go back, look at my session, click here on the tagged hands, and I'll just show the hands that I tagged. So obviously very handy when you're playing, especially multi-tabling a lot of hands. So under this section here to the left, we have our report section. This is a list of all the reports available, and you can go through and you can add custom reports and edit current reports. Right now I'm on the position report. You can load up your reports by sessions, by stake levels, hole cards, time breakdown. I'm not going to go into every single one of these, but essentially you get an idea of what that looks like. Showdown hands by poker sites. Now towards the end here, my opponent report. This will take a look at all the opponents I've played, so you can analyze and look at maybe tough opponents that you've played with that are regs. Analyze their game in a little bit more detail. Population report will take a general look at all of the information by players and break it down by player type. This is super handy if you play at a specific site a lot and you have a lot of hands on people. You can really get an idea of the difference between theory and what your population is actually doing. I'll run one of these real quick so you can see what it looks like. So you get a population report that looks like this. It takes every single hand played in your database and it breaks down all of your opponents by player type. These are the default player types. You can go and click on the config button here and you can edit and change these player types. So you can add new ones, change kind of the parameters for how it's categorizing them. And it'll also take a look at all of the player data, and it'll create a pop-up heat map so you can kind of mouse over and get an idea of what range your opponents are playing, and you can click on those hands and look at those in more detail in your hand grid. Range report here will also do a similar kind of report, but it'll look at all of the data broken down by types of hands and ranges, and again it's also configurable, and you can add filters to these by clicking on the config button here, and you can add and look for a very specific situation. So say you want to look at how often somebody check raises on the flop and then folds to a re-raise or something. You could add that filter, look at the range of hands that your opponent is doing that with, and so on. The hand chart deviation report is what I alluded to earlier in the video. Once you create a hand chart, you can run this report, and after every session you can have DriveHUD 2 take a look and compare your session to your hand chart and see if you made any mistakes. It'll highlight those and list them in your hand grid so you can review those. And this last report is a live play screen. So while you're playing live, you can have this running and it'll refresh and let you know kind of where your range of hands are at, how much money you've won by table, and show you your hand history list here. So you can also tag these hands here as you play as well. So this is just handy to kind of have active as you're playing in session. So go back to the position report here. If there's a stat I wanted to add into my report, or I wanted to edit, or say create a whole new report, I can just simply right click on the column header here. On the left it'll list all the available stats, and you can search for a stat by a keyword. On the right it'll list all the current stats that are here. If there's something I wanted to add, I can just simply drag and drop it where I want it into my report. If I wanted to create a new report, I just enter the new report name here, click create new report, add whatever stats I want into that report, and click apply, and I'll have that listed there. So on this section here on the right is your hand history grid. This will show all of the hands that you've played, and you can list those by the last 250, 1,000, or all hands. If you're in your sessions report, you click on a session, it'll just load the hands for that session. If I right click on a hand, I can run an equity calculation on it. I can export this hand to a form format, so I can discuss this in more detail with fellow poker players, and there's different formatting options you can select here. I can replay the hand in the hand replayer here. I can either double click or again right click and select replay hand. I can tag this hand for review, which we discussed earlier, make a note on this hand, delete it, or select all of my hands and delete or replay them, whatever I want to do. I can also sort here by how much I've won. If I click one time, it'll show me all the biggest losing hands. I click a second time, it'll show me all the biggest winning hands. If I click a third time, it'll show me absolute value of all the, whether won or lost, what my biggest pots are. So that's kind of an overview of the hand history grid. Finally, here on the bottom left is a widget graph section. You can add any number of quick widget graphs to your reports. You just simply click Add Widget, select which one you'd like to add, and then click Save. You can add showdown, non-showdown options to your graph. The same options apply as the one above. You can export your image, you can change your chart type. You can remove your graph by just clicking X, or you can temporarily hide it. So if you were looking at a report that was taking up a lot of your space, you can just simply hide it for now. The next time that you load DriveHUD 2, it'll keep that same widget, just temporarily hide it. So those are nice little options to get a quick overview of some things that you're doing visually. So let's go into the hand replayer in a little more depth. To load a hand in the hand replayer, like I said, you can double click on any hand. You can right click and select replay hand. If you want to load multiple hands into the replayer, you can control plus click, and those will highlight, and then you just right click and click replay hand, and that will load all of the hands you select. If you click on a session from your sessions report and you replay any hand, it will load all the hands from that session. And let's go ahead and load up a hand now into the replayer. So at the top left hand side here of the replayer, you have a list of any current hands that you have replayed. That's just for a quick reference. In the middle here you have an options menu. From here you can tag a hand for review. You can load a specific HUD. You can save your HUD position. So if you want to move some of the HUD elements around on your table, you can do that and then save your HUD position. If you left click and drag the HUD, you'll move all the elements from the HUD at once. If you right click on an element in the HUD and drag, you'll just move that element. So once you position the HUD how you want it, you just go here and click Save HUD Position. These options are also the same options you'll see on a live online game. So if you need to rearrange or move your HUD around, you can do that and then save your position here, which is most convenient when you're playing live. If you want to rotate the HUD position one seat left or one seat right, if it's off for whatever reason, you can do that and then save. Here's some hole card options you can set in the replayer. Hide your hole cards, hide your opponent's hole cards, and then you can change the chip value here. And then to the far right, we have the same options that we have in the middle tab ribbon, the equity calculator. So you click this, it'll load the current hand in the equity calculator. You can create a hand chart from here, open the ICM calculator, start a new quiz. This is to go into the support forums if you have a question about DriveHUD 2. Here you can export the hand into a postable forum format or a raw hand history format. And here you can make a note on the hand. So if we move down here to the play controls, we have the play button, which will play all the way through the hand. The inner right will move forward one action at a time. The inner left will move back one action at a time. And then the far right will move forward one hand, or far left will move back one hand. The bottom here we have all the pots that are played for this session color coded. All the ones that are in gray are hands that you were involved in or Hero was involved in, and they are color coded by pot size, and you can see the pot size. So you can click on any of them here and it'll go to that hand and load that specific hand. On the right here we have a minimum big blinds, so you can set this to anything that you want in order to show those hands in your session. So if you're playing a tournament or cash game and there's a bunch of hands you don't want to see that didn't go to flop, you could set this to minimum 2 big blinds or 3 or whatever you want, and so it'll not show you any of those hands down here. You don't have to fast forward through them, you can skip through those. Or if you just want to see like your big pots, you could set it to 30 or 40 and it'll just show all of your big hands. And then here we have the fast forward controls. This will skip to pre-flop, flop, turn, or river. So that's all basically for the hand replayer. So next we have our tournament tab. At the top here you'll see a general overview of your stats, how much you've won. You can look at just multi-table tournaments, sit and goes, or all your data. Below that we have our tournament graph that has in the money, return on investment, total dollar won, and then you can set these different tabs to show different amounts. And then to the right here, this will show any of the top finishes. So anywhere you've placed first, second, or third in sit and goes or multi-table tournaments. It'll list all of those, the amount that you won. You can click on those and review those just for ease of convenience. In the middle section here, we have all the same controls that we have in our dashboard, so I'm going to skip over that. On the left here is your tournament reports, and there's various different ones. Similar to the dashboard, but there's stack size, M ratio, and all the other ones that you would see also in your dashboard: population, range report, and so on. And you can right click on any of these and edit or add different column stats that you would like, or remove them, or create new reports. And on the right here we have our hand history grid. All the controls are the same as in the dashboard, except you can also run an ICM calculation from any of these hands by right clicking and selecting that. So that is basically the tournament report, and then also you can add widgets here on the bottom as well. So the next section here is R&D, or research and development. This is an area where you can create custom graphs and explore data in much more detail. There are several default R&Ds that are included for cash games and tournaments, and you can explore those. All of these are editable, and you can also create your own. I'd advise watching a separate video on how to create these from the DriveHUD website. I'm just going to kind of briefly explain what they do and how they function. Up here at the top, it'll list the current filters that are set for this particular R&D, and then you'll get a graph with a bunch of different data points depending on what is taking a look at, but this will show you what the plot lines are. In this case, success rate $1 at showdown. Probably add anything else we want here. If we wanted to add like $1 when seen flop, for example, and I can just give it some color and save, and then it'll add that to our graph. And click on any of these data points that are here, and it'll list hand history, so you can go and replay those and explore them a little bit more in depth. In the middle here is a bunch of widgets that'll show all of just a kind of a general overview, and then you could quickly switch between different data set types, in this case position. So we could look at how we're c-betting in a single raise pot from the small blind and get more data on that specifically. We could take a look at it by texture, number of opponents, and so on, and then you can add some more of your own widgets. But again, to explore this in more detail, I would recommend taking a look at the R&D creation videos from the site. Down here is the hand history grid, all the same functions as in the dashboard. You can right click, export, run calculations. And here in the middle you can import or export any R&Ds that you create. So if you create one, you want to share it with somebody, you can create that and export it, and vice versa. So that is handy, but this is basically just an overview of what this does. I'd recommend checking this out in more detail in further videos. Our next tab is our HUD tab. You'll notice here a square stop looking button. If you click this, it'll stop the HUD from recording and remove all HUDs from your tables that are currently running. So I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you're told to do so or you need to in order to create a custom stat. On the bottom left here is our table layout pull-down menu and the list of the HUDs that are available under that table format. So if I want to edit a HUD, I can just select what format table layout is. So I'm going to select 6 max, and then the HUD name. You'll notice a bunch of default HUDs that are included in DriveHUD. I'm going to select one here at random, and this will allow me to edit my HUD from the preview design screen here on the left. On the right here are all the stats that are available that you can either search. So if I wanted to find one that was basically bet on, let's say, 3-bet, I can just type that in and it'll show me all the 3-bet stats that are available that I could add to my HUD, anything that has 3-bet in it. Or I can manually select them from these, and then I would drag them to this section, Selected Stats. This Selected Stats section shows all of the currently selected stats in your HUD that you have in your preview design screen or within a single element that you have selected, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. So to the right of the selected stats section is our general HUD settings. These are various different settings, so you can go and apply these globally to the HUD that you're currently selected. So if you want to set a filter, number of players of the table, how old the data is, and so on, you can select any of these options and click OK. The next option here is our player profiling. So here it'll come with several default player profiles. You can create new ones or you can edit existing ones and add a range of different stats that trigger what that icon will look like. There's several other default icons that you can add in here. You can create your own. You can explore this in more detail in other videos as well, but this will allow you to show what type of player that is in an icon format in your HUD. You have to have that option selected in your HUD, which in this case we do. It's this little circle icon, so when the minimum sample of hands is hit, that threshold is triggered, and then whatever profile that you currently have set here, whatever is closest to it based on the player's stats, it'll profile them that with that icon, just easier to recognize them. This last section here is the badges, and we call them bumper stickers, but you can create any ones that you want here by clicking create new. You can add filters and stat ranges, and this will trigger anytime that somebody has fallen or done something within this particular range of stats or a specific filter. Then it'll show a little badge right above their HUD that'll look like this, so you can easily go, oh, okay, well that person is doing this or has done that particular thing. So I'm going to go over to this preview design screen. Again, all of these sections, how to create a HUD and everything, are broken down in more detail, so I'm giving you a very general overview. But if I want to add a different stat to a HUD inside of an element, I just click. Once I click once on the HUD, it's going to put me in a design phase. You'll notice all these X's here, this check and X down at the bottom. I can move any of these elements where I want them. When I select them, the stats that are within that element will show up here. So if I wanted to add a new one to that element, I would grab it from the all stats, drag it here onto my selected stats, and then it'll show up in this element here. So that is that new stat that I just added. I can drag it back to remove it and so on, and resize my elements. So again, this is covered in a lot more detail, but if you edit your HUD and you make any changes, then you click your X here to save it. I'm going to X just to cancel. The section to the right here is our pop-up designer. So any of the pop-ups that exist for this HUD will be listed once I select them. Otherwise, it'll list all of the ones that I've ever created here. Once I select and go into my design mode, then any of the HUD pop-ups that are in this specific HUD will list here. So this one doesn't have any, for example. I'm going to try and select another one that does. So I've selected that one, that element. Now any of these pop-ups that exist here will show up in this section. So pop-up designer, again, there's another video that goes in much more detail about how to edit pop-ups and add them to your HUD. For now, you can just know that you can add them to any of your HUDs or create new ones from this section. On the bottom left here, I have any of my design elements that I can also add by dragging and dropping them to my HUD. So here I have a plain stat box. If I drag and drop that, it'll add a new area that I can add new stats into my HUD. I can remove it by clicking the X. A horizontal 4-stat box, I can add that. I can change the direction of it by clicking the circle, rotating it, so it'll be vertical or horizontal. Line bar graphs, again, just drag and drop that onto an existing stat. Graphs, bumper stickers, which are these elements here. Heat map, so if there's any stats that I want to show a heat map when I mouse over, I would just drag and drop that onto the stat that I want, and then in this case, for 3-bet, it'll show a heat map when I mouse over that on my table. Hand chart, so if there's specific hand charts that I've created and I want to show on table, I can do that. Player profile icon, break line, so once I have selected stats, I can either add a break line by clicking on this button here in the middle, and that'll add a line break to force a new line, or I can add that here, dragging and dropping it, or within the element here and dragging and dropping it there. Tilt meter, and just a plain stat box. So again, once I changing those elements, I can save by clicking the check mark. At the bottom here, I can manually save. I can upload my HUD to the store. I can upload it, make it available for free. I can set a charge on it that I want to charge any people who purchase it. If you do that, half of any of the sales that you get from that HUD will be sent to you and are kept by you. You can import and export any HUD profiles and then duplicate a HUD. So for example, if I have this 6 max table layout here for this particular HUD and I want to copy it to 9 max, I can just click duplicate, click 9 max, click OK, and this will create the same HUD within 9 max. So if I'm on a 9 max table, that HUD will also be available. It's kind of important to know because if you create one, let's say for 6 max, and you also want to make it available for full ring or 8 max, you have to duplicate it, otherwise it won't show up on your HUD table options there. So this is basically a general overview of the HUD tab, and then again, the very last option here I can delete, and that will completely remove my HUD. The last tab we have here, this will default to our HUD Store. Here you can browse any of the available commercial and free HUDs. So if you go to this pull down menu, you can sort and just look at free HUDs or commercial HUDs. The great thing about this is you can mouse over and you can preview any of the HUDs. You can get an idea of kind of an overview of what the HUD is about, and you can sort them by different types of HUDs if you only want to look at Omaha, Hold'em, tournament HUDs, and so on. So there's many different HUDs available here. You can browse through all of those. Any of the ones that are free, you just click install and it'll instantly show up back in your HUD tab here or on your table. And the ones that are for purchase, obviously you have to click buy. Once you purchase, you just go back in here and click install, and then they'll be available for you. The next tab here we have is our recommended apps tab. So these are primarily a lot of the apps that we also develop at Ace Poker Solutions. If you play on any of the Asian app sites, you'll want the Asian hand converter. This will allow you to play on most of the popular Asian app sites. Player X-Rays, an automated notes app, Leakbuster to get an idea of where you're making major mistakes. This is only for cash games, and then some of our affiliate recommended apps as well down here. Our next tab in here is our rakeback options. These are continually changing, but they are any of the current deals that we have with any of the rakeback partners that we've worked with for a long time. A lot of these we've had relationships with for 10 plus years, so they're reliable partners. You know that you'll get good, fair rakeback deals. So you can check in here. I'd highly recommend registering with any of these because it's free money if you play on any of these sites. This next section is our recommended Twitch streamers. You can look at some of the most popular ones that are available and watch any of their streams or some of our recommended ones. And if there's somebody that you really like, you can click add and you can recommend those streams and they will appear in here, but you can scroll through and look at all those. And the last tab here is the installed apps. Any of the apps that you currently have installed in DriveHUD 2, you can launch them from here. And like I said, the Asian hand converter, for example, this comes with a 7-day trial. X-Ray comes with a 30-day trial. You have to launch these one time to launch the trial. Once you do that, you can run those and they will operate from here. In the case of the Asian hand converter, all you have to do is launch it one time and then you never have to go in here to launch it again. So that's it. Hopefully this overview was helpful, and if there's any questions, you can just click on the little support icon here in DriveHUD 2, send support a message. They'll get back with you within a few hours. They're available basically almost 24/7, so they are very responsive, and we consider this a collaborative effort with the poker community. So if you have any suggestions on features or functions you want to see, send us a message. The development team is very responsive about these things, and hey, good luck at those tables.